from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me Parker Harris. Parker, the way I like to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. You have a very interesting, biography, and I was really impressed. So if you can just introduce yourself and what you are up to.
Sure. So I am an entrepreneur that's very passionate about business and started multiple companies or projects before going to work for a Fortune 100 technology company. And through my experience there, started to realize what I was really passionate and good at. And that was bringing together entrepreneurs and executives, investors to have intimate conversations around business and technology and philosophy. And that is what I currently do in my role at Junto Global.
Great. And thanks again for being on the show here today. So, Parker, the way I love to I'm always curious by nature. What let you know that you have to choose to be in this entrepreneurial journey rather than going the standard way? So what was the moment that you said, you know what, I'm going to be a full-fledged entrepreneur?
That's a great question. I think there was multiple moments along that journey. I started working at a very young age because I wanted, money and resources to buy my first car, which I bought when I was 14 years old and fixed up. And I think I found a lot of joy or a lot of internal reward by adding value to other people. So that was something that I think that's something that entrepreneurs often have is just a desire to add value to other people. And then I took the traditional path. I worked in jobs for a while, and I just didn't feel like I was heading on, I wasn't getting what I wanted from those. And I saw a lot of politics that I was like, this is not a game that I want to learn how to play. I want to be really good at adding value to other people and being rewarded for that. And I started doing that through a health company that I started when I was 17. But our corporate attorney, or the attorney that was starting to do our partnership and lease documents, was like, hey, what's your goal with this? And I was like, well, I want to build a big company that has an impact on the world. He's like, well, it looks to me like you're creating a job for yourself. So if you really want to do that, go learn finance, which he described as the language of business, and then go work for a big company. So I ended up taking that path and working for a large wireless technology company. And when I was there, I had aspirations to become the CEO of that company. And I got to know a number of the executives and started talking to them about their day-to-day and, their fulfillment level and how much they enjoyed what they were doing and what they recommended to me. And to my surprise, they were like, I wish I was asking these questions when I was your age. And I was like, that's super interesting because there's, thousands and thousands of us, tens of thousands of us in this company competing for your job, and you wouldn't even recommend it to me. So I started asking, what advice would you give your children? And they were like, that's a very personal question. I'm like, yes, it is. And it led me to start looking in my life currently, what I was doing that added values to others that I enjoyed doing. And I had this very ethereal moment where I was sitting on a bench at the beach, and I saw my life as if I was living it, like I saw my life going through if I stayed on the path that I was on. And I just realized I couldn't take that path, that I needed to take more of the unknown path, or the path less traveled. And that led me to where I am today.
Great. So every time I speak with someone who passed it all, always they tell me the best way to do it is actually what the path that you follow is to go for a large company before you go and you start your own business. But the question here, Parker, is sometimes not everyone get the luck, to have mentors and to have, the accessibility to work for large company. And, I know a lot of people who have the passion, they have, the the ideas, they have everything, but they miss the know-how. So if someone today want to follow your path but they don't have access, so what do you advise them to do?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're asking that because I was someone that didn't have access either. I applied for a number of different positions that I didn't even get an interview for, and the position that I ended up getting, when I initially applied, I didn't get the interview. They wouldn't even interview me. Um, and I'm going to answer your question. Is I found myself stepping into leadership roles in extracurricular activities, different organizations that were more professionally focused, where we would bring in um, executives. In this case, it was I still remember it was like a director of business development for the company I ended up working for to speak to this other students. And I continued to do this even after I wasn't a student organizing these type of events. And I made a really good impression on him by being very prepared um, with him, giving him a great tour of the campus and just building a personal relationship with him based on, shared faith and just, being a person that wasn't asking anything from him, but just like building, looking at each other as peers. But he was someone that I respected. Again, I introduced him really well to the group and there was just a great conversation. I asked some good questions. I made other people feel comfortable to ask questions. So it was a good environment. And at the end of the event, I remember he came up to me and gave me a hug. He was like, "If there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know." And I followed up with him a few days later, and I was like, Michael, there is something you can do for me. There's this position. I really want it, and they won't even interview me. Can you just help me like get an interview? And he's like, "Send me over your information." And within a week, the HR team reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we'd love to interview for you for this position." And because I failed a number of times previously with different companies and different roles, I like nailed it because I'd thought about all the things I did wrong and what I wish I would have said. And I thought about that for days and days going into this interview. And I just nailed it and I got the position. And so, just to be more specific about your question is the last day of college, when I graduated, I'll never forget the professor gave this lecture around basically the career opportunities within the degree that we were all. I was a finance major, um, and I was shocked. So by that time, I already knew what position I was going to take. I got multiple job offers from different companies, and I had chosen mine 6 months earlier, right? So but I was still working hard in school and showing up to class. And that last day, he gave that lecture, and I was like, this is too late. And and 90% of the students went up to him after the class and they were in line talking to them and like asking questions. And I was like, you guys are in trouble because you waited too long. And I realized that there was like 10% of us that had multiple job opportunities, multiple job offers, and were going to like really cool opportunities. And those people all took on leadership roles. They were adding value to the other students because they enjoyed doing it. And that those type of people get multiple opportunities because that's what people want within their company as well.
Hmm. So, in a way, Parker, from what you described to me, and I asked the question to reach to this question, and thank you for answering this way. How important is to keep networking with people? Because, you know, in order for you to get that interview, you needed to go to an event, as I understood. So,
Organize the
how
event.
yes, how important is networking, and especially in today's landscape that we live in for an entrepreneur?
I, the saying goes that your network is your net worth,
Right.
right? So I would say that it's almost everything, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. But in that same breath, I would say that I think that most people have networking wrong, and it almost makes me like physically ill sometimes to go to a networking event because people are just like, "Oh, what do you do?" Right? And
Mhm.
it's basically like, "Can you?" And really, what they're thinking is, "Can you help me? Can I sell you something or not?" And then the moment they determine that you can't buy anything from them or you can't help them, they just start looking over you and looking at who else is in the room. And I just like I have very low tolerance for that. So I think of it more as relationship building, right?
Mhm.
And like really building relationships with people that potentially you enjoy being around, that there's some shared values or like-mindedness or just again a general enjoyment with each other and leading with value, like being abundant, being like, oh, I have someone I could introduce you to, instead of like looking to get value, looking to give value. And when when I did that, people wanted to hire me on the spot. And I wasn't even looking for a job. Like this was at a point when I already had a position that was like I was really happy with. And I was like, I'm not interested, but people want that type of energy where it's like, oh, this person has an abundant amount of energy where they must have something to give me, or like I want to build a relationship with that person. So I think not being transactional, but being really relational and seeking to add value to other people, even if they can't do anything for you at that time, is really the secret to networking or again relationship.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Parker. We should call it relationship building because the terms networking by itself, it might be we come together in one event and then we exchange maybe business card or whatever, and then hey, like see, like I do this, you do that, and then you don't build a relationship. Like it's like look very same-ish, I would say, because I'm trying to sell my services, the other party is trying to sell their service. So I agree with you. It should be kind of a real relationship building. Now I know Parker that
Okay,
yeah,
and just to add to that, that's I love what you said
please.
there. Is I think the easy part sometimes is like building that relationship in the moment, right? It's like there's that energy of different conferences or events where there's just like something that happens there. I think the hard part is continuing that relationship after the event, like doing the
Right.
follow up, inviting that person to coffee. Sometimes that first coffee is easy. The hard part's the second coffee, the third coffee, the fourth coffee, like actually thinking about that person, sending them things that would add value to them without any expectation in return. And the company that I currently lead, which is a mastermind for entrepreneurs, that was that was kind of like what we were doing was like, it's very difficult to meet someone and just have coffee with them a dozen times, 20
Right.
times over a year or 2 years or some period of time, and try to do that with like 5 or 10 people is either was like, potentially much more difficult. So we decided to find these really high quality people and then bringing them together for a conversation, on a regular basis was kind of like a hack for us of how to build that relationship, keeping up that frequency and creating value for each other.
Yeah, definitely. And this actually wanted to ask you about, the mastermind that you have built. So I know that you've built it, and it was kind of inspired by Benjamin Franklin. Can you explain, the concept and how it's different from other mastermind groups?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm actually reading Benjamin Franklin's biography from Walter Isaacson right now. So it's given me a newfound appreciation because this was a big part of his life. He started Junto in 1727 when he was in his early 20s. He was a tradesman at the time, a young printer. And essentially, he brought together other industrious people, people that were diligent, hardworking, for a conversation once a week where they would discuss business and philosophy and technology and politics and spiritual, like anything that was important to them. They would have discussions around. They went through questions around like, what are you reading that would add value to us? Who has made a fortune recently that we can learn from? Who has lost all their money recently that we can learn from? Who can we do good for? Like, have you met someone recently that we can help? How can we make our community better? Like these type of questions, right? And I firmly believe that the quality of our questions determine the quality of our lives. Um, he went on to start like American Philosophical Society, where they would continue these conversations. He got into the Freemasons, which some of these conversations happened. He went over to France and England and into the salons and coffee houses and continued this type of collaboration, right? Which some people
Mm-hmm.
would say is the magic of Silicon Valley, or if used to be that type of network where people came together to share ideas and support each other. Um, there was no hierarchy. It was very flat. It was a roundtable conversation where everyone is peers, and they would build trust with each other and build relationships with each other. Um, so I think that was part of the magic that he he was really good at.
Mm-hmm. Um, to your point, like, and it's like kind of a coincidence or uh, maybe a moment that just happened before we start to record this. So I was talking to a friend, and just to your point about Silicon Valley, and we were discussing like, what's the secret? Like why Silicon Valley kept being this way. And one of the point, and we were discussing like in a philosophical way, I can say. And one of the things that both we agreed on is regarding that there's no hierarchy over there. So you know you cannot you don't have to follow to reach someone. You don't feel like you are inferior or like you need like some 2-3 steps to reach them. So it's quite interesting that you brought this point. And I believe what you mentioned is a spot on. So how
Can I
how
can I
how
can I
this
add to that real quick, Matt?
please.
Is like I think entrepreneurship is one of the most humbling experiences of life. Probably like getting married it can be kind of humbling. Having kids can be humbling. Sports, I think, is like a kind of a humbling, a tool that teaches humility. And I think
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is one of those spaces as well. One of the great Silicon Valley entrepreneurs named Peter Thiel, and
Okay.
Elon Musk quotes this a lot, is you know, entrepreneurship is like chewing on glass and looking into the abyss, right?
Yeah.
It's like the hardest, most painful, challenging thing that it's like the choice to do it is its own like special choice. And once you're in it, like you kind of want to help other people that are in it too. Um, and unfortunately, and I'm still trying to understand this in my life, is some people love hearing that wisdom or love being challenged or supported, and some people hate it, right? In scripture, it's the difference between the wise man and the fool.
Right.
Um, so, um, I think that when there's a group of people that really get how hard it is and the value that can be created, there's some there's an energy around it and some values and principles where there's a benefit to contributing to the success of other people.
Yeah, true. I agree with you, Parker, on this. Now, continuing on that, and do you think first? Let me ask you this way: do you think that part of what you mentioned about the Silicon Valley, do you think it faded little bit, and now we have different kind of mentality over there, and this is causing some challenges for younger entrepreneurs? Do you think we have something like this today?
Well, I think a lot of Silicon Valley left Silicon Valley, right? Like, people move to there's a great place in the United States called Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And there's a joke that a lot of entrepreneurs move there and a lot of them moved to Texas and, Austin area. I think that's where, you know, Elon Musk moved somewhere in Texas, not Austin, Florida. So I think there's been this, flattening of the world. And with COVID and really the response to COVID, um, the concentration and the ecosystem that was in Silicon Valley spread it out to a place. And I think technology also caught up to a point where it still facilitates those interactions, but the network is a little more closed and harder to maybe get into versus attending, an incubator event or, some sort of event that was just happening in Silicon Valley previously. So I do think the landscape has changed and maybe it will revert back, but my experience is things never go back to the way that they were. Just kind
Hmm.
of moves forward and changes. So I haven't spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. I have spent some time in IDEO and Palo Alto and like learning from some really interesting entrepreneurs. But my experience has been more in San Diego, which is in Southern California.
Hmm.
And it has a little bit more of like a defense tech, like military technology and defense
Right.
technology. And the culture around that is a little more closed, right? Because there's just like confidentiality things and you know and so the culture was different where I was from, and I wasn't. I guess the wireless semiconductor company that I work for had a defense tech arm, but the entrepreneurs that I associated with were more like e-commerce companies, marketing agencies, consumer-facing technology companies, and so there was this desire to collaborate and find a space to have these type of conversations.
Right. So that is a fact, I think, Parker, that, as you mentioned, because the technology now allows us, to be anywhere in the world, literally, like you can be sitting maybe on a tropical island in the Pacific or in the
Or
Indian Ocean.
Dubai and Eastern Europe.
Yeah, exactly. But now I believe, and I want your opinion on this, but still I believe, based on the work that you are doing also currently, you still need this relationship building and kind of masterminds, right?
Community. You know, it's interesting. I've learned that human connection is a more basic need than success. And so sometimes people sabotage their own success for connection, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So I think if we don't have a community, a success team that really supports our success or our growth, it can be very difficult to do alone. And I think that unknown unknown, like Mark Twain, who's like an American philosopher, has this quote that it's not what you don't know that's going to hurt you, it's what you know that isn't so. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs being limited by what they know that isn't so. And until we have a group of people that can see it and challenge that point of view, we're stuck there.
Right, right. And this is lead me to the next question actually. And I'm liking, the way how we are doing this. And just for the audience, guys, like it's a casual chat. We didn't prepare for this, but Parker and myself, we're on the same frequency it seems today. So what are some of the let's say two things. First, how entrepreneurs can prepare themselves from personal development perspective and habit building perspective to be up to the level that you were mentioning, Parker.
We talked a little bit about like if you give someone feedback or share some wisdom with them, they'll either love you or hate you for it, right?
Right.
Depending on being the wise or the fool. I think that growth mindset of being open to feedback and open to change, open to growth is like the foundation of all of it. From there, I would say learning to set targets, like set and achieve targets, execute discipline is another like core aspect of it. And then something that I'm really fascinated by is this idea of processing triggers that come up. Uh,
Mhm.
Mike Tyson, who was a famous boxer in the United States, said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face."
Right.
you know, and I think entrepreneurship is a great place to get punched in the face and punched in the stomach, metaphorically. And it's like, what do we say to ourselves, and how do we act when we're getting punched in the face? And are we going into a victim mode? And are we destroying relationships and even drinking and destroying ourselves? Or are we the hero that overcomes these challenges? So I think learning to craft our own identity and write a story or a narrative that serves us and like living out that story is incredibly valuable. From there, I think getting really clear about who we are and why we're here. Like, what is that pain that we want to solve? What is our mission? What is our purpose? What is our passion? Simon Sinek he famously says like start with why, right? Great
Right.
leaders start with why. So really figuring out our why and then creating a vision that's tied to that why. And from there, setting up a space and environment for our success. I think is a little talked about piece of personal development that is incredibly valuable as it impacts discipline and focus and clarity. And then from there, I think habits are a really important part of this journey, like setting up the habits. And especially in entrepreneurship, there's the personal habits as well as the business habits that can lead to success, both on like, you know, I'm really fascinated about leading KPIs versus lagging KPIs and like
Mm-hmm.
controlling the controllables. Like, what are the inputs that I can control? Because everybody knows the output that they want, but they don't often know the input that's required to create that output. And
Right.
that's true with business and often on the personal side as well. And then from there, I think, you know, it gets life can get pretty easy if we've mastered those pieces.
Right, right. Like very great advice, and I think a lot of wisdom from you, Parker. And I'm a big fan of all these the thought leaders. I would say whether it's Simon or the others that you mentioned, and it's about the mindset. And honestly speaking, just if if the audience would allow me, like I don't talk much usually on the show, but to your point, it takes like a lot of time to understand that you should go out of the victim mentality, because I was doing this a lot, and I was blaming. Yeah, it's like they don't understand me. The timing is not right. This that. But once I shifted my mindset and I said, okay, maybe things are not going fine, but I will not try to find problem outside. I would try to find problems inside, and let's see how I can. Maybe I did a mistake, so let me try to improve. Next time I would try. So very spot on that one, Parker, from your side. Now,
But then, uh,
please.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but two things
No,
is like
please.
one is that's why there's this adage like the gift of the journey is who we become, not the destination.
Hmm.
And like I think that just ties to what you said, right? Is like it's so much more fun to get out of that victim place and become like the hero that can overcome challenges. And that becomes the gift of walking the path versus where we get to the money, the cars, the whatever, right? The houses, the like whatever sometimes those outward rewards are not like the real gift where it really becomes being the person that can overcome challenges and stay steady and think through situations when we're getting punched in the face, right? Being able to deal with those. Um, and then just to round out this personal development conversation is I think a lot of times personal development focuses on the individual, like the personal development, where I don't think personal development is an individual journey. I think a lot of times the ways for me, I also had a victim mentality for a long time, even though I had done a lot of work on myself, or I thought I read all the books and attended all the events. And and then it took another peer when I was sharing some challenges I was having in my business to point out the fact that I was being a victim. And I was immediately like defensive. you know, I was like, "What are you talking?" And I had to sit with it for a few days or even a few weeks. I had to realize he was right. And so I think a community and a success team are also like that last layer of the personal development journey that set up the foundation for our business. I also am fortunate to have a success team and community for my health, for my relationships, for my own like fun and the impact that I want to have on the world.
Yeah. Now, one thing also, Parker, that came to my mind, because I didn't do it honestly, but maybe when I was younger, I used to do it. But I want to hear your opinion on that. Some people falls in the trap. They say, okay, I want to have this person as a model for me. So I want to become like X or Y. And then they go too much into a cloning mode, I would say. They want to clone that person, so they forget about their why, right? I want to hear from you about like how we should avoid being in the trap. So just to let you, every single one, want to become like Steve Jobs. Every single one want to become like, I don't know, Bill Gates. People want to become like Elon Musk. Some people
Sure.
want to come. So why we should, okay, of course, we could learn from these great entrepreneurs, but we should not be falling in the trap of being a clone of them. So I want to hear your opinion on this.
I've heard it said, and I think it's so true, is you know you're not on your path when you're following someone else's path,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's this documentary that I love. It's called Finding Joe, and it's about a guy named Joseph Campbell who created a framework around the hero's journey, which is used by Hollywood and writers and screenwriters around this journey that's like very embedded in the human experience. And one of the analogies in it was like around like the Knights of the Round Table and how they had to enter this like forest. This like it was a scary place, but everyone had to enter their forest on their own in their own path. They had to blaze their own trail. And you know, the surest way to know that you're not on your path is if you're just following someone else's path. And so I think it can feel really comfortable to adopt that. And maybe there's definitely things we can learn from mentors or great people that came before us. And a lot of times they share that wisdom freely. But I think the challenge with that sometimes is there's this learning framework that I love. There's 4 levels of learning. There's unconscious incompetence, there's conscious competent or conscious incompetence, then there's conscious competence, and then there's unconscious competence. And I think the challenge with someone like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Elon Musk or Steve Jobs is there's a whole lot of unconscious competence that it's like when you're in a place, when you're in unconscious incompetence or conscious incompetence, it's like it's sometimes it's like 50 steps ahead when what we really need is 2 steps ahead, you know? And and so, yeah, if it serves someone to follow the path of someone else, then, then I'm not going to judge that. But I think a lot of times for me, it slowed my path down where I was always looking for the answers outside of myself versus learning how to hear the answers within myself and trust my own gut. And I've had the fortune of being mentored by some, multiple billionaires and successful people. And when we would ask them, or when I would ask them, how do you make these type of decisions? Like, how did you make that decision? It was, I trusted my gut, And so then it's like, okay, well, how do you learn to trust your gut? And I think that's like this thing of, again, going within, learning to hear ourselves and to be wrong, make some mistakes and be like, oh, I didn't trust my gut here. Like I need to listen to that voice inside of me. So I think there's sometimes a paradox to truth, right? Where it's like there's 2 contradictory ideas that somehow both exist. And so I think there is an element where we can benefit from mentors and successful people that come before us, but we also need to learn how to trust ourselves and listen to ourselves and figure out who we are. Um, Socrates once said, like, knowing thyself is like true power or like true knowledge. And I heard it was actually stolen from like Egypt, like Egyptian wisdom on like the temple of um, what's that place in Vegas, the pyramid? Do you remember like the
Yeah, yeah,
Luxor? Yeah, the
yeah, yeah,
Luxor like
Luxor.
temple in Egypt. And I think the full saying is like know thyself and you will know the gods. Like something like that, right? Like just so powerful where it, I don't know how many people in this world actually know themselves.
I fully agree with you. And this is where I believe we see a lot of noise, Parker, out there, you know? Uh, and I tell people, yeah, but you know what? This noise will fade. I believe this noise will fade. It's temporary. And you know what? Some people ask me, and why are you doing this? Why, you could have, I don't know, done something else, enjoyed your life. Why you're recording every day? And, no reward for that. I said, look, guys, it's not about the reward. It's not always money. It's, about to um, learn from people, because I start to see it as a learning path for myself, and trying in the ocean of noise outside, if I can be that small drop that can enlighten some people, for me it's okay. I'm happy. This is the way I look at it. And yeah, so and they say, okay, are you going to become like Gary V? Are you going to become like Joe Rogan? I said, these are great names out there. Of course, like I can learn from them, but I cannot become them, because I have something inside myself that I cannot, even if I wanted to, I would not be able. You cannot be the clone of someone else. And it's a little bit philosophical, because at certain point in time, in certain location, in certain all the things that are around you at this time, you cannot be someone else. You cannot, even if you try to, even if you imitate the sound and the voice and the, mimics, you cannot be someone else. So this is my belief.
Well,
Now,
and Mehmet, and those people that we wanted to be like, they didn't want to be like someone else, right?
exactly.
They wanted to be themselves and manifest what was it within them to manifest, right? So we can learn
100%.
it. And one other point, Mehmet, you just mentioned is super powerful, like around the noise, right? There is so much noise, and the amount of noise is ramped up, like from like, if you think about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it's like we'd hear something and we would be able to sit with it for weeks at a time, you know, but now, I think this is back to like the fool versus the wise man, right? And
Right.
I'm also like, I don't want to think of that as a binary journey, because one of my friends says this to me that I really love it. It's a fool in search of his folly becomes wise, and I think that's true for my journey, um, and or I hope it's true for my journey. um, but I think that there's like a point in someone's life where maybe they learn to shut out the noise because it doesn't serve them. But I think a lot of people are addicted to it, and it's I don't remember where I heard this, but it's like this idea of every human problem can be solved if we're willing to like sit in a quiet room by ourselves for 30 minutes. you know
True. True.
um and I think that happens for different people in different ways, even in the United States right now. And I don't know how this is going globally, but a lot of young people are actually turning away from alcohol for like one of the first generations in many generations, where just a lot of young, healthy, successful people are like, this doesn't serve me. Like, this is not part of my life anymore. The same way that I think people are shutting off notifications on their phone, going into airplane mode more and more, deleting social media apps from their phone. So I think there is some counterculture going on, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure what percentage of the population it is, and exactly how does somebody make that choice. My assumption is
Hmm.
it's like a certain amount of pain building up, right? And maybe then hearing from someone else that this worked for them and then being open to it. Um, but I think it is going to be interesting when technology or AI, or I have a goal of building some technology that actually like helps people achieve their goals, not the
Hmm.
advertisers' goals, and like actually being like, hey, you know what? To achieve your goal, you need to not be on your phone right now. So we're gonna shut it off for you. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I believe, because we are turning back to your point, and yeah, it's something global. Because I read about it in the US and other part of the world, even here. Because I think humans are turning back to their nature, because our nature is to be outside, to be in having a walk in the woods. Of course, we have like hot weather here, but anyway, it's still in winter time. It's nice. You can go to
Probably
a
have a
gym.
forest there.
Yeah. So, but to your point, people, they started to feel this is dumb, right? Like, I'm sitting in front of a small screen the whole day, just scrolling like this. What is it for me? Okay, maybe I can entertain myself for 5, 10 minutes. And I do it honestly sometimes. I don't hide it. But I cannot understand, like, or I cannot imagine myself doing this whole day. And that's why, yeah, I do, I was lucky to read a couple of books. One of them is um, deep work, right? So this book is really,
Oh,
you
new book.
can, yes. So you use it as a framework, and it really gave me kind of a roadmap how to do it. And the author did a very good job. And he mentioned from the beginning, guys, you cannot do this in one shot, because it's like when you are used to do something physically, you cannot stop it all of a sudden. Like you cannot stop smoking once. And same thing for, these notifications, because they are kind of addiction. So you need to do it slowly, slowly, and then do parts, in the day where you specify until you can reach this 90 minutes deep work where you don't do anything other than the task that you are focused on. So yeah. So Parker, like
And that
great conversation. Yeah, please go ahead.
uh, I remember hearing this story in the last couple of years that the guy who invented email doesn't have an email
I've
because he
read it
doesn't
somewhere.
want to, yeah, he doesn't want to be that easy to get a hold of because he's thinking about stuff for like weeks, for months, trying to solve like big problems. And if he's like, if I'm receiving 100 emails today, I can't think about what I'm trying to solve. So that's kind of been interesting for me to think about. And over the last year, I've exited from where I normally reside, and I'm traveling with my wife, and it's really simplified things down and cut out the noise and helped me to identify what it is, like what the steps forward are in a way that I wasn't able to do previously.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like we call it sometimes kind of a detox from technology, and it works like magic. I tried it a couple of times, and guys, I advise you, if I know like it's hard to do it a couple of days in a row, but if you try it just for one day to be away from emails and social media, oh man, you would discover yourself again. This is the experience that I can tell you from my point of view.
And you
Um,
might be making your team stronger, your business stronger. Like you might be able to show up better for the family. I just think there's a lot of unintended consequences where sometimes it goes back to identity. Like we almost get meaning from being available all the time or being there to solve like someone's problem versus like allowing them to solve their own problem and build that
right,
confidence and trust themselves.
right. Now, I have a question, out of curiosity for you, Parker. Like,
Sure.
if you had unlimited resources, what's one problem in the world that you would try to solve?
Education. Um, I think education, my understanding of why education exists is to unlock the potential for human beings, right, or
Mm-hmm.
maximize the potential for human beings. And I think that the current education system wastes talent, and so I think there's a way to um, restructure, redesign education to bring out the best in human beings, both personally, health wise, relationship wise, financially, career impact, that we're just scratching the surface of is going to be one of the next big renaissances. I'm always like
Mm-hmm.
fascinated by margins in like a business. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I think education is one of those industries that has the highest margins and potentially is adding the least value for those margins right now. And I think those type of industries are like ripe for disruption.
Yeah, agreed. Uh, Parker, as we come, to almost to the end, is there anything that I missed to ask you? And it's not a tricky question.
Yeah, I mean, I think this conversation could continue for hours. I don't think there's maybe one thing you missed. I think you know your people, and I have a big goal to get out to Dubai sometime in the next
Ah,
year or two. So maybe I can come visit you out there, or we can get
sure.
together when I'm out there and have this conversation again.
Great. So meanwhile, until you come to
Oh,
Dubai, where
wait,
can, yeah,
I
yes,
I
yes,
did. I remembered one thing I wanted to say too. Is
sure, please.
it was around like technology that stopped us from like being on our phone, all the time. Because I think
Yes.
sometimes the biggest thing, I see this when I walk around college campuses or when I walk around just the world, is people are on their phone, and I'm not trying to judge it, but I think the thing that I got most from my experience in university was the people that I met there. And so sometimes like the phone, what it needs to say is like, hey, talk to this person to the right of you. And that's been one of the biggest things that have allowed me to be having the freedom and abundance that I have today is I was the person that was talking to the person around me that I didn't even know yet. And sometimes that was a very awkward conversation where I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk to that person again. But a lot of times it was, it was like, oh, here's my business or here's my email or here's my phone number. We should connect. And just forming those relationships, I think is, again, one of the keys to success back to network is net worth. And so I think humbling ourselves to face rejection and having uncomfortable conversations with the people around us. And those people can become, our friends, our mentors, our peers, our collaborators in ways that maybe is hard to really understand until we try it.
Yeah. And until you come to Dubai, where people can find more about you and, the mastermind that you do.
I'm on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Zachary Parker Harris, which is my full name.
Okay, so I gotta make sure I will put all the handles in the show notes. And Parker, really, as you said, I can go hours and hours. I can make maybe a record 5 hours recording with you. I really enjoyed our discussion today. So thank you very much for enlightening us. And this is one of the things that I try to do is because although the show name is the CTO show, but I believe these human conversation, this personal touch need to be more and more discussed in tech and in general also as well in entrepreneurship. So thank you for sharing, all the experience that you told us today about. And for the audience, guys, like I'm really enjoying reading your feedbacks and, thank you very much for providing, all the support that you are giving me. And as usual, I like to read also negative feedbacks. If something you don't like, don't be shy. Tell me, Mehmet, we want you to enhance this, do that, do this. Try to bring someone, from this field to talk about this topic. So I'm all ears to you. So I'd love to hear your feedback. And thank you for being supporters. Thank you for following. And as you know, it's a daily show. So if this is not a Friday, you're going to see me tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.